Hello, listeners. Welcome to another episode of Reckless A Talk, our TTRPG interview show where we sit down with some of our favorite writers, players, GMs, and streamers to get to know a little bit more about what makes them who they are. I am, as always, your host, GM Nathan, and this week I am very excited to indulge in another nerdy passion of mine, as I get to sit down with Claire Clausen, she, they, and Zachary Burrell, he, him, from the Warlock Podcast. Warlock was launched in late 2021 and pretty quickly caught fire. I was admittedly a bit slow to listen, namely when I put it on, I didn't realize that it wasn't in fact an actual play, but actually a D&D and anime-inspired audio drama. So I was left a bit confused, which is a phenomenon we talk about in the episode itself. I have, of course, since gone back and been kind of really astonished at the craftsmanship of writing, voice acting, and genre work that goes into a piece like this. Zach serves as editor, producer, and voice actor for the show, while Claire voices main character Nova, their fictional world's first ever warlock, as well as dabbling in writing and more. Both are absolute delights, and both got their actual play start in the also popular Severed Sons podcast, which we talk about, alongside learning lessons in writing for audio, effective collaboration, and letting go of absolute creative control, promoting Kickstarting, and, well, the power of the Rock Lee anime fight in Naruto. But really, it's just a bunch of nerds nerding out about anime and D&D and writing and performance. So I really hope you enjoyed this one, and really hope you pop over to the Warlock feed to give it a try. If you enjoy anime, D&D, or just quality cartoonish yet dramatic fun, it might be for you. As always, lots of links and info in the show notes, and that is all from me. Now on to my conversation with Claire and Zach. See you next week. Why, hello, Zach and Claire.
Why, hello.
Why, hello, Nathan.
Nailed it. Smooth. How are you guys?
Good.
Yeah, doing great. Feeling
So
good.
lovely to be chatting with the both of you. So excited to be chatted with the both of you.
Thanks for having us. Very excited to
Yeah.
be here.
I'm super excited to be
Been looking
here.
forward
It's
to it.
fun.
Well, for the foolish listeners who are not aware of who you are, what you do, and otherwise why they should be very excited, as we are, about this episode of Reckless to Talk, could you please introduce yourselves to the listening audience?
Yeah. Hello, my name is Claire Clausen. My pronouns are she, they. We're here talking about Warlock. So I am the voice of Nova Ravenwood on Warlock, as well as I help do some writing, and I help do character creation for their designs, and I do some episode art for every episode. It's a lot of fun.
Hi, I'm Zach Burrell, he, him. I am the producer, editor, and every voice that we can't find a voice actor for on Warlock. If we need a voice, I go in there and I mess with the tone of my voice, and we hope no one notices.
There we are, NPCs.
It's fun.
Exactly. I mean, like I kind of always kind of see myself as like the DM of Warlock.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And so it's like, yeah, I just have to play sometimes every other character. But also, I know we're talking a little bit about Severed Sons, and I'm Trax on Severed Sons.
Oh yeah, I'm Spitz on Severed Sons too. I do that too.
It's all of the above, all sorts of good audio podcast content. Well, just before we get into that rich, probably tragic orphan backstory of you guys as creators and as people, hey guys, what's Warlock?
So Warlock is, I hope, the only D&D anime audio drama. We're striving to kind of capture that shonen anime Saturday morning cartoon, exciting bite-sized episode content, but for your ears instead. It's like closing your eyes during an anime episode and just listening instead. But it is the story of, in our world, the very first Warlock, Nova, voiced by Claire.
Yeah, it's fun. My favorite thing is that it has the overarching D&D story, but also just like it has little direct D&D hints of
Absolutely.
jokes in there.
Oh,
and
yes.
it's nice. It's a little icing on the cake.
It is. I would say it is equal parts anime and D&D of just like there will be little frosting for each type of nerd
Yeah.
in the Warlock podcast. Well, we'll get to Warlock more in depth here in a bit, but let us paint the path. Pave the path? Paint the path?
Let's
You don't
paint it, too.
paths. You can paint it.
You can paint the path red.
Yellow Brick Road.
Yeah, weird kind of Wizard of Oz ripoff vibe. Let us lead into the Warlock thing by talking a little bit about you guys. So obviously, while Warlock is an audio drama, it is a D&D audio drama, and you are also are on tabletop role-playing game podcast Severed Sons and do all kinds of other fun tabletop things. So for the both of you, and answer in whichever order you feel appropriate, what was kind of your... Yeah, well, that's good too. I mean, I'd love to see that done digitally over webcam. I think Zach technically won or lost. I'm not sure which.
I don't know. I don't know, man.
But how did you get introduced to tabletop role-playing games, to D&D, and I mean, even if it makes sense, to kind of fantasy in general?
So I'll go. So I was probably, I think it was 4th grade. I was spending the night at my friend's house, and his dad had his D&D group over, and I saw them setting up with the miniatures, and I saw the DM screen and all the dice coming out, and I said, well, what are they doing? And he's like, oh, it's Dungeons and Dragons. And I had literally never heard it before.
Yeah.
And so I said, oh, that's cool, like a board game. And he goes, well, why don't we watch? And so very quickly watching became, here's what kind of character do you want to play? It's fantasy. Like, just pick a you know, do you want to do magic? Do you want to do sword fighting? And I said both. And so I made Kirgoth the Fighter Mage for Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. And I was hooked immediately. I was like, oh my God, we are playing. Like, his name was Chris. And I was like, Chris, do you DM? I can't wait. I can't wait. Like, every week. There was a point where we were every day after school, I'd run over to his house and we play D&D.
Yep.
And I'm pretty sure he was just making it up as we go, which is, very DM. But yeah, I've been hooked since. Played through high school, played through college. Took a break and then kind of picked it back up with the Severed Sons group. And then, I've been fully immersed since that, for sure.
Wow. So that's interesting, because I feel like a lot of people I talk to have much earlier or longer breaks than starting at elementary school and going all the way through college with any amount of intensity. So that's a lot of Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
Was that AD&D the whole time too?
So we played AD&T. I was a military kid, so there was a lot of moving. People, either someone else would move or I would move, and so he moved away, and I kind of took the mantle of DM. And by then, the 3rd edition came out, and so I remember when that was this was like pre-internet, just the bookstore we're walking through, and I was like, oh my God, what is that? Is that? And I remember the covers, and I remember getting all 3 books just in one. I was like, it'd be Christmas, I don't care, just don't give me anything Christmas. I need these books right now. And, got them, just poured over them. And I started a new group with my friends, and we would meet in the library, and like those little renter rooms, it's like you reserve the room, and we would take Saturdays and just go in there all day. See, I think the only edition I haven't played is the 1st edition.
Oh wow. What about you, Claire?
Yeah, so I did the kind of meandering route of like I've always loved fantasy. When like the like satellite to get basic channels, but like when there was a cloud outside, you didn't get anything.
Yep. Yeah.
I'm a bit younger, and so my family, when the cloud would block out the TV, we would put on Lord of the Rings. So I just grew up with Lord of the Rings and with like Dragonheart and all of this like great fantasy, wonderful things. So I was always the weird kid running around pretending to stab my brother in the face while taking off a helmet. And I would have people all the time who were like, do you play D&D? Do you play D&D? And I was like, I want to so bad, but I'm also a theater kid and have no free time. And so I didn't start playing until 2017.
Got it. Yeah.
When I was living out in Memphis, and I actually started with Pathfinder. And I am bad at reading. I try, but I'm just bad at it.
Deeply.
Yeah, no.
And so I kind of like learned Pathfinder as we went because I had two very sweet friends who were there to kind of teach me as we went. And so I played a very dumb, what are cat folk, I think is what they're called in Pathfinder. Cat folk.
Yeah, cat person,
rogue.
whatever. One of them.
Zach knows her. Her name's Feliday. And then I brought her back for the first time when I was on with Severed Sons. So yeah, I'd played then and I was hooked. And then I played a lot during the pandemic, and now it's just a huge part of my life, and it's so fun. I DM now. I have like my own. Yeah, I DM for 3 of my friends, and we're all not men, so we call our group the Triple Ds. It's a lot of fun.
I remember when you were just starting. You were like, I DM tomorrow. I'm so nervous. It's the first time. And now, you're like, no, whatever. It's old hat.
Now I show up and I'm like, all right, what are you doing, Theo? What are you doing, Julie Andrews?
Yeah,
that's
classic.
Actually, one of the characters is Julie Andrews.
So usually that is kind of the lone jumping off point for our podcast, but Warlock is obviously not just a D&D thing. It is also an anime thing. So also kind of the parallel path to that is, where did you start getting into anime, and what hooked you, and whether it is shows or themes or feelings?
Yeah, I'll go first.
Oh, yeah,
you went first last time.
That's true.
So I would catch little tidbits of Sailor Moon on in the mornings and was like, this is amazing. Wow. And like little snips of Naruto here and there. But I have an older brother and he didn't like anime. And honestly, like, I think it's okay because I was a very passionate kid and I would have had a tough time in junior high if I was allowed to be as into anime as I would have.
You would Naruto run everywhere, wouldn't you?
I would. I still do.
You probably do. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's aerodynamic.
It is. But so I would like just catch little things here and there. And I thought it was so pretty and cool. And I loved the art style. And then when I was in Girl Scouts, one of the other girls in my troop taught me how to draw baby Inuyasha. And that's all that I drew. I have like notebooks full of baby Inuyasha.
Is this like chibi Inuyasha?
Yeah. And I still have not seen that show. And I know so little about it.
You got what you in your soul, you've gotten what you needed out of that, in that you got to draw notebooks full of chibis.
Exactly. And then I started kind of dabbling in it here and there. I watched Little Witch Academia, and then I watched My Hero Academia. And then I was introduced to the love of my life during the pandemic, which is JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. And it's been no turning back. I have completed all of Naruto, and I have officially hit the halfway point in One Piece.
Oh,
so I'm doing the big ones.
Got the bona fides here.
Mob? I watched more Mob today. I finished season 2, episode 5 is what I just finished. It's so
as of the recording.
Yes.
I'm sure much more will have been binged by the time it releases.
And I'm sure that One Punch Man will have been started by the time that this comes out.
Probably. I'm planning to watch the first season and then reading season 2, and then season 3 is going to be animated by Mappa. So I don't know. I might just watch it. I don't know.
It's good. It's a good show.
It is. I've seen the first episode and I loved it.
It's a good show.
Do you read it?
No, I don't. Yeah. I'm going to edit all of this out, but I am definitely a person that once I see it, a lot of times, like then reading it, especially if it's like a comic book or a manga or something, like my brain just really struggles. It's just like, well, but it's not moving, or it's not different, or oh, that was different.
Yeah.
So once I have started a show, that is just how my brain has to consume it.
Yeah. I feel like that with a lot of other mediums, but with the anime to manga, because like the anime is so based on the
Yeah.
manga, like it's an easier little transition. And I'm still really excited to see things animated. Like I'm completely up to date on Chainsaw Man. I'm still so excited to watch the episodes as they come out because it's so excited to like see them brought to life. And
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, it's a good time.
Zach, what about you?
It's funny because it's like the anime started just not too long after the D&D journey started. So it's kind of funny. It makes sense that I've like married the two together in my mind so much. But my very first introduction to anime was Neon Genesis Evangelion, which is a rough
thrown into
one
the
to
deep
start
end.
with. Just you know what? Let's start off right there. So after that was done, because I was a Toonami watcher. It was I feel like it was around the same time as I watched Cowboy Bebop on Adult Swim, like early Adult Swim, where I was like, oh, if I stay up to 11, I can watch this show. And so those were kind of about the same time. And then went a little bit lighter and watched, I think it was like every Wednesday after school, watched Dragon Ball Z. And then I stopped for a while. No reason, just like, I'm gonna take a break. In college, I had a stomach surgery. Long story short, almost died. They had to take a chunk of my stomach out. And so they were like, rest as much as you can, and I spent a week at home, and then I went back to college. It was right in the middle of college. And so I was taking it easy. I was my roommate at the time. We were watching a bunch of stuff, and he was like, hey, I started this show called Naruto. Do you want to watch it with me? And I was like, oh, sure. Like I jumped in where he was, which was the Chunin exams. And it was the Rock Lee fight was the very first episode of Naruto I watched. I was like, okay, I'm interested.
Wow.
I'm in. And so, he was like, oh, you're down? Okay, let's go back. And so while I was recovering, we watched up until then. Then I got into the manga, and I binge that just because I was impatient with the story. I had a barista job, and I would wake up at 3 a.m, and I'm like in the dark reading on my phone the new manga releases, and then catching up on the show. And so that kind of sucked me back in, and then I watch as much as I can. I have a 5-year-old, so I watch I only get about an hour in the evening to watch anything, and usually it has to be agreed upon what we're watching. So
makes sense.
But I got my partner into anime as well, with like Full Metal Alchemist and Naruto and what else do we watch?
Demon Slayer.
Demon Slayer, yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tam's very much the more I'm kind of a very surface level anime enjoyer. I'm not like I always read about I'll see a lot of these slice of life shows where it's like I got turned into a pair of rabbit slippers that can only be worn on Sunday, and I'm like, I'm probably not going to be interested in that, but I'll watch One Punch Man or
the big stuff.
The mainstream stuff is kind of because it's easy to get my partner into.
Yeah.
So.
Our biggest anime, the biggest weeb on our show isn't me. It's our dear Nick, resident anime expert.
He is an expert.
Yeah, it's fun.
He knows all about everything. And it's great. Yeah, I basically I'll write an episode and be like, Nick, anime up this fight, and he'll go and be like, you got it.
It's like, you got it, boss.
It's like a script doctor kind of thing.
He
make it more anime.
He animes up stuff. Exactly.
Yeah. Awesome. I mean, that's a dream job. Hell yeah. So we'll start big picture. What does playing tabletop role-playing games and writing, and of course making audio dramas, what itch does that scratch for you guys? Like what hooked you when you first started? What has kept you doing it? And what has now kept you so much that it takes up large swaths of your regular human life.
So I don't want to speak for both of us, but we are both performers. We both are theater artists, and so we are so conditioned to have that performative aspect to probably a lot of the stuff that we do.
What are you talking about?
But so it's like, especially I know like during the pandemic, when every theater was doing awkward Zoom performances.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, let's just play D&D instead. And it's like, I feel like that kind of really got things going for like the actual play stuff, but we can get into that later. But yeah, it definitely, even if it is just performing for other people, it feels so I guess performative, and it kind of hits that itch of being in front of an audience. You when you're in college, they're like, it doesn't matter how big the audience is, it could be one person. And so it's but it feels like that. It feels like improv combined with storytelling combined with character acting, so it's like I feel like that really hits that spot for me.
Yeah, I'm similar. I always tell people when they're like Dungeons and Dragons, so I'm like, yeah, it's like choose your own adventure, Lord of the Rings, and it's so much fun, and I just love to be a little goober with my friends and to get them to be a little goober too. Like, what was fun, especially for Severed Sons, like I started as the one shot queen, and I was always the silliest little beans.
Yep.
And then I joined into the campaign, and I was like, oh, I gotta be more serious.
I have to be a multiple dimensional character. Shit.
Yeah. Which was fun, and it's just, like it's so fun to just be a part of a group who just like, you all decide that you're going to tell this story together, and whether if it's just for you, the people in that room, or if it's for you and people who are going to listen as well, like, it's just exciting, and it's fun, and it can be funny, and it can be tragic, and it's just a good time. I like it.
Yeah.
I like it a lot.
And I know that at least you guys, and we'll get into the kind of the detail of production, because it's one of those kind of podcasts. But I know that you guys at least are credited as writers. And I know, Zach, you do a lot of the kind of main writing and producing and that kind of stuff. But I know also, Claire, you are often credited as writing. So do you guys view yourselves just kind of generally holistically, but also in the context of Warlock? Are you, in your soul of soul, are you a performer or a writer or both? Or what's the interplay for those kind of multiple roles for you guys?
For me, especially for Warlock, it scratches all my little creative itches. Because,
right, and you do art, you do all kinds of supporting stuff around the podcast. That makes sense.
Yeah, it's really fun, and like, Zach and I are always bouncing ideas off of each other, because Zach's got like the whole plan in his little noggin.
It's little.
It's sorry.
You can't see me right now, dear listener, but I have a tiny little head.
Cut to X-ray of the cranium, just tiny but mighty brain
Homer
inside.
Simpson. Anyway,
yeah. And then I know some secrets, and so
you certainly do.
It's really fun to be like, hey, what about this thing? What about this? And just like really let the imagination run loose. And I've been helping to write some of our little dragon scrolls, which are just like a minute long. And I'm working on a couple of like bonus episodes for our Patreon, which are mostly shenanigans, which is my specialty in writing. And it's fun because like I never considered myself a writer before, but like now as I'm writing stuff, I'm like, ooh, look it.
I am a writer with a capital W.
Oh, yeah.
My little typewriter out here.
Exactly. And then it's such a fun way art wise to not only challenge myself to do a lot more complicated of scenes and poses and expressions, because I try to, when I read the script, I try to choose the moment that like sticks with me, or a moment where I get a really strong visual while reading it. So it's always a fun challenge to figure out, okay, like, how am I going to do that? Oh, there's so many people in this. Some people are just going to be kind of shapes, and that's fine. And I love character design. It's so fun. We like to be collaborative as best as we can with our guest stars and our guest artists. So to see what they envision for their character and taking that idea and then kind of merging it into what we have as like Warlock's visual world.
Mm-hmm.
I find that very satisfying and very fun. And then I've been told that I sound like a cartoon my whole life. And so voice acting just makes sense.
So
and
now let's make it happen.
yeah,
it's a
yeah.
work.
I'm having a ton of fun with it.
I guess I've always kind of seen myself, I've even with theater, I have written a couple plays. I've written a couple like just 10-minute plays, like one acts. But I can never get away from wanting to perform and being in front of the audience. That visceral kind of having the audience right there and kind of interacting. And so I feel like Warlock, it is very much that, like, both sides for me, where I love being on the production side of it, but also, get to voice a couple characters here and there. And it's so much fun, just like Claire was saying, like collaborating with everyone, kind of figuring out things, because I do have that like that large brush stroke. And I always I tell myself every time that I'm going to like write a bunch of episodes, and then Claire, I feel like you're like, no. Like,
I thought you were going to say that you were going to write down your plan, and I was like, you don't do that either.
I don't do anything. No, I am a very like seat of my pants person, which has worked out pretty well, which is why I haven't changed anything about my style. But it's like my mind was like, all right, season 2, I'm gonna write like 5 episodes and then blah da 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 da. But I realized that so much is like going off of what the audience is. We have in our like Discord, people talking about the episodes, and I'm like, ooh, that's a good idea. Maybe I'll do that next episode. I was like, oh, maybe I'll kind of like work. Even just editing an episode makes me come up with ideas for the next one. So it is very like seat of my pants, kind of going with the flow kind of style that is a lot of fun.
This is probably a little too dismissive sounding, but the writing being kind of the end, a means to an end. I mean, rather, where it's like that adds the structure to it to let you perform, let you produce this kind of high octane kind of thing. Right. That makes plenty of sense.
Right.
So,
right.
You mentioned it a little. You mentioned it a little bit, but jumping into Severed Sons before we talk about Warlock. So, was that your first, for both of you, foray into an actual play of any sort, any make, any stream, any podcast, audio, visual, etc.?
I think because we both did.
Oh, we both did Friday Night One
Shot. We both. So long story short, most of the Severed Sons played. We did a campaign. We did a Descent into Avernus campaign during the pandemic. It kind of started. It started like September of 2019, and then led into 2020, and then it kind of we during then we played like every other night, so we like really binged. But then at the end of that, we were like, hey, why don't we kind of maybe see what it's like to record? And so we did a one shot. And I don't know, Claire, how did you get involved with that?
I think Ron asked me, so it's also everybody involved in the Severed Sons knows each other, but not everybody knows each other, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's like a weird little like
no one's met everybody.
Paul.
Yeah.
Paul has met everyone.
Paul
Gary
has
met
collected
every
all of
single
the
person.
Infinity Stones. And so I know Ron because the game that I played, Pathfinder, the first time I ever played, was with two of his good friends. And I was supposed to play in a one-shot that he was going to DM, but I was like stuck in Minnesota because the weather was bad. There was something weird, and we like
There's
just
for
missed
reasons.
each other.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I think he just reached out to me because I think somebody else was gonna play, and then he asked me to play kind of last minute, and I was like, yeah, I want to make a character that are Finn and Jake, but not Finn and Jake.
Mm-hmm. And so the legend was written.
Yeah, and that's kind of how it. What was Falcon's Crest?
Yeah, Ransom at Falcon Crest.
Yeah,
Sounds familiar. Was that
got just
was that a
fun.
pre-written module?
Yeah.
It sounded familiar. I couldn't place it though.
I was the only one that died in it.
Yeah, I know. It was so sad.
Oops. I got disintegrated like with like 30 minutes left.
Killed one of the PCs in a one shot. Oopsie doodles. So I mean, knowing that you guys were, kind of, not the DMs, were players and kind of sucked into this, well, let's see what it sounds like recorded kind of vibe. But for you guys, knowing that you're, of course, performers and have been performing and doing things publicly for quite some time and enjoy it, hopefully, theoretically enjoy it. What was the decision point for you guys of like, let's take this thing and put it out as like a packaged, quote unquote, product? Like, do you remember kind of the decision point or the feeling even of kind of making that choice? Because it's a weird one, that not most people don't make the choice that the three of us have made.
I think, was it Ron's idea? Probably. I guess I wasn't there for like all of it because
I think so. I have to admit, my D&D cardinal sin is that I'm not into Critical Role, but I think a lot of the other members are into Critical Role, and it was kind of like, hey, they do this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was kind of like a collective. I don't remember anybody kind of having that, being the one to be like, we're doing this, but it was kind of like, hey, like, especially the way, we wish so badly that our Descent into Avernus campaign was recorded, because it was just so epic and so many great moments, and it's so many things. Ron Murphy, our DM, is a fantastic DM. He is a true storyteller, where he wove all these threads and they brought them back together at the end, and it just so satisfying. It's Brandon, who plays Diamond in Warlock, kind of mentioned something the other day to me, where he was like, the best thing about D&D is that you think back on these memories and you don't say, oh, my character did this. Oh, it's like, do you remember when we jumped off of this and we like sailed that? Like, it's like, it doesn't really, we had that feeling after that campaign, and we were like, even if no one listens, let's just record it and put it out there, see what happens. And so that's kind of how it began. Yeah.
What is the experience of not just being a public performer and public presence and having your name and voice and, to a degree, face out there, but doing so in an online setting and doing so in a, kind of globally, hypothetically visible way? What was that experience like for you guys, especially as kind of experienced performers on stage, and et cetera?
It's wild. Like, because, when you perform on stage, it's like, I feel good about my performance. I did well. Nice. Sometimes you get to see people after the show at the stage door, and you're like, haha, maybe you'll get a review depending on what theater you're doing.
You had. Blah, blah,
yeah.
blah.
And like, that feels really nice. It feels really good to have that, like the affirmations that you've done a good job. But then to have a presence online and then have people like, like we've made friends with people who just like our show, and it's wild. Like,
Yeah.
somebody that Claire, who used to do And Dragons, is now my roommate, and we met on D&D
Wait,
Twitter.
I didn't know you all were roommates.
Yeah, we're roommates now.
Oh, that's amazing.
As of like last week. But yeah, like that's wild to me. And like there are so many people that like I have such high opinions of, and that I think are wonderful humans that I have met because they enjoy listening to us play D&D, and it's like mind-blowing. I'm struggling to find words because it's remarkable to have a reach. I mean, of course there are always like weird downsides of being like a public figure online.
Right.
But it is funny because, you know, especially being a female presenting person on Twitter, having opinions.
Yep.
The downfall is that there are people who are like, you're wrong. And I'm like, you didn't have to. Like, And it is funny, as like the Warlock Twitter has been growing, Zach will like send me screenshots of times that he's getting like mansplained, and he's like, is this what it's like? And I'm like, yes, it is what it's like.
Yep.
It's it's been a trip, especially like as a you know, I have pretty much Buzzsprout, who is our podcast host, pulled up on my browser, like at all times, pretty much. You know, anytime an episode is out, I'm like, all right, how's it doing? What are they doing? But it is fun to look at, to see where people are listening. And it's like, wow, we have 2 people in Australia that are listening to us. That's wild. There's someone in Zimbabwe. That's amazing. You know, like it's so cool to just, you know, just like we're having fun doing this thing, and it's reaching like continents that I never would have thought, you know? So it is very humbling to be, to see how, you know, how different walks of life that are coming together and listening to this story we're telling. It's very, very exciting.
Yeah. My favorite is Zach will sometimes message us being like, hey, somebody binged the whole show today, and just screenshots somehow every episode.
It's my favorite thing. You're like, oh yeah. Because I mean, you know, we only have like 20, I think we have, including our little Dragon Scrolls, we have like 21 episodes. I don't know.
And they're all like 30-ish minutes, right? I think
around, yeah. Between like 22, I think the longest is 30. That was the season finale of last season. But so it's I think I calculated it out. It was like 6 hours, I think, to listen to the whole thing.
Easily bingeable.
Yeah. Because some of them are shorter, but like, yeah. So it's like, wow, someone just, maybe they were doing like a road trip and they're like, cool, I'm going to listen to this. And it's very, you know, that brings me such joy. It sparks joy.
So you guys have been doing Severed Sons for a little bit. And then presumably Zach, but I don't know, gets the idea to do more things.
Yes.
So can you talk a little bit about where that came from, and kind of where the seed was planted and how it grew into the beautiful tree that is Warlock?
So I kind of, you know, talking about how I've been interested in D&D and anime at the same time, kind of like starting at the same time and then kind of throughout my life. And so all of my characters that I create kind of have a little bit of anime flair to them in some way. You know, I try not to be like the edgy character, more the you know, I just try to kind of emulate some of those like fun, quirky characters that you know, that everyone kind of has as like their favorite characters in anime that aren't always necessarily the leads. But so I wish I could quite remember how it started, but I remember I knew I wanted Claire involved from the very, very beginning. And we talked about it. And I was like, okay, how cool would this be we did something, it originally was going to be an actual play
Yeah.
that was just really heavily edited, because I had listened to some Dark Dice.
Yep.
And I really kind of liked the way that they were doing things. And I was like, you know, especially kind of Severed Sons being my only foray into actual play. I was like, oh, cool. Like they're doing something pretty unique with it. And I was like, oh, what if we did something anime style with this? And that was the original plan. And then as things went, I was like, oh, maybe we just kind of script it, because then we can kind of really control how things happen, the moments. Because anime is those beats are so important in anime.
Mm-hmm. I think our biggest concern, honestly, was like the fate of fights in anime are very important. And we're like, oh no, how are we gonna? Because
what if you lose?
Nova's so squishy. She a warlock.
She a bab.
Just a wee bit.
But yeah, I was like, I definitely want to do something shonen. And so I was like, Claire, make a character. And we kind of like hashed out we really did hash out quite a bit of lore right off the bat.
We did, right. Yeah.
So like we kind of came up with this story, and then you know, as more people got involved, I was like finding like parts for people and kind of expand. It's like, oh, cool. So you want to do this? Oh, okay. That kind of leads to this. And it kind of just snowballed from there. And Claire brought on Nick.
I brought on Nick and Jack.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Nick and I were roommates at the time, and we also Nick is just my anime buddy. I love Nick. Love you, Nick.
Shout out, Nick.
we would just watch anime in the living room all the time. And then Nick also was a DM for me when we did Strahd during the pandemic. And then I was like, Nick, you maybe have an opportunity to play D&D. And he was like, I never get to play D&D. I always DM. I don't know why he sounds like that in my impression, but he does.
It's fantastic. I can't wait to play.
Pretty much.
He sounds more like Mark Wahlberg there.
Yeah, you're right. I made him a ghoul for some reason. I can't wait. Yeah. So it was so fun to bring Nick on, and Nick really does fulfill just like this really wonderful niche for us. Like he really does. He's the salt meme guy.
He really is,
with
yeah.
Anime
Adds that
touches.
little spice.
Yeah. And then Jack is wonderful too. Nick knows Jack better than I do, but again, during the pandemic, we had a Discord server that was just like Weebs Are Us. And we just talked about anime and manga and all of that. And I knew that they were a very talented actor. And I was pretty sure that they also played some D&D. And I was like, oh, would they be interested? And they're a great part of the team as well. We love Briar. Briar is such a fun, Briar is our edgy character, but Jack plays her with so much heart that she's not edgy. She's edgy compared to the other ones.
Right. It's on the spectrum of edgy for the show.
Yeah, and
right.
Jack just does it so well. So we are thrilled to have them on the team with us as well. We just really, I feel like we just got really lucky and just nailed a great team.
Just came together
early on.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then of course, Tam is my partner, is the Lady in Darkness.
Yeah.
And she, she probably is she always feels bad. She's like, I feel like I can't participate because I don't know enough about D&D or enough about anime. I'm like, but you know stories,
Yep.
Yeah.
When we went to we drove up, we did a lot of driving for family holiday stuff and bouncing ideas off each other. I'm like, this is also super important to just
Good
help
stuff.
me,
Yeah.
let me she kind of is. I am so yeah, cool, let's do it, let's jump in, let's go, let's get going, and she's like, okay, hang on. Hang on. She definitely balances me in that I'll edit an episode and I'll be like, all right, it's cool, it's good to go, and she'll be like, okay, hang on. She'll listen and be like, here's my notes.
Yep.
Fix volume here.
Gotta have
put
one
a
of
sound
those.
effect here. Give us some space here. Take out some space here. I'm like, oh, you're right. And so,
Mhm.
yeah, she is essential to the
A team
the
effort
process.
is
Exactly.
what you're saying.
Yeah.
So something that really struck me about Warlock, it was a particular strength of you guys, is that it really feels like starting from episode 1, you guys had a very clear vision for the themes, the feeling, the story, the kind of those little inserts that make it both D&D and make it anime. The way you describe things, sound effects, the way that the dialogue is written and phrased with voiceovers coming from their thoughts and translating that into an audio medium. So it's very interesting to me to hear how collaborative the experience was putting it together. So what went into, kind of first and foremost, what went into the story? And I guess, can you describe the story just a little bit briefly for listeners? But what went in kind of all the pre-production momentum of deciding on this story that you guys wanted to tell?
So the story is basically, we've kind of got this world that we've created that is separate from the Forgotten Realms and the main D&D universes, in which this world, to use magic, you have to be born with that ability. So you know, if you play D&D, you know that's a sorcerer. And all the sorcerers are descended from these 10 ancient dragons that settled this land and took human form, formed families, and it's been hundreds of years, and these families have spread out, and these what they have are called legacies, in which everyone kind of has they can all cast the typical sorcerer spells, but they also have a special extra gift. For example, Briar has plant manipulation. She can grow plants and create, spore pods, and Ren has a special legacy in which he can kind of manipulate the elements into physical attacks. And the story is from the perspective of Nova, who wants to so badly be an amazing sorcerer because her dad was one of the most powerful sorcerers in the city, and her brother was a prodigy that disappeared, and she is born without the ability to use magic. And so she struggles with that until she meets the mysterious Lady in Darkness, who grants her power, becoming the first warlock of this world. And so it's kind of that story of her enrolling in the magical school, the tower, and focusing her skills while also dealing with some kind of external threat that is becoming more and more prevalent.
Mm-hmm. So, and I'm sure it changes drastically from group to group, game to game, show to show. But, so much of, at least what I understand of D&D kind of things is, oh yes, there's kind of the overarching story, but you leave space for characters to make choices, for success, for failure, for lots of branching paths. And that's kind of how things go. So from your guys' perspective, as you have both been on an actual play and also obviously are doing an audio drama, how much kind of, I guess, seat of your pants, to steal your phrase from earlier, Zach, but how much of that spontaneity and kind of reactiveness do you guys either leave in? Do you try to make space for? Happens naturally, or that you're just no, this is just a kind of we write it together and come up with it, and that is the space. So how does the writing and story generation process go for you guys, and how does it differ?
I think it depends a little bit episode to episode. There have been some episodes where Zach is just I got it, and
I know what I
got
gotta
to
do. I know what's happening.
And then he'll send it to us and be if there's any, if you want to look this over, see if you have any edits, tweak your lines if you would like. And then what I usually end up doing is I send for every line between 3 and 5 takes. Usually I aim for at least 3, But then sometimes I'll get a line where I'm like, I'm going to do it the way it's written and I'm going to do it the way that feels right. And then I'm going to do it another way that's a little sillier. And then sometimes I just riff.
I don't know how many times I've been listening to takes from Claire and I hear, that one was so silly, but I'm going to keep it.
Yeah, I'll just keep the ones that make me laugh really hard, and I'll just put them in there. And
It's a good approach.
I'll usually send Zach a message where I'm like, I was zooming for that one. I had some zoomies.
Tell me if you need it again.
And then I know that I think Nick does similar, where he'll kind of riff on lines.
I feel like
Isaac
Nick always kinda has some.
Isaac is one of our big riffers.
I love Isaac.
Brilliant.
I love Isaac so much. Isaac will completely rewrite the line in the take, and I'm like, this is better.
Yeah.
Like he'll always give me the line as written, but then he'll give me like 20 seconds of improv off of it. I'm like, well, I'm keeping that.
Oh, that's the one.
Yeah.
But basically, like I starting from the beginning, I had pretty much the first half of the season in my brain, and the first episode, I remember kind of like hyperfixating and just like getting it done and be like, this is the pilot. Like, what do you think? Let's change some stuff, whatever. And then kind of, like I said, a lot of my process is kind of like, I read an episode, we tweak it, everyone puts their take on their lines and tweaks some things, and then we put it out and we're like, okay, this is what I have in mind. And our group chat can be a little bit much sometimes, because it's usually me being like, okay, but so what if we did this, and then this happens, and then and this person shows up, and so we'll
then
talk
one
about
of
that,
us will get an idea and I'll be like, blah.
Yeah. All caps interrupt.
Yeah.
So another thing that kind of occurred to me, talking a little bit more about writing, is that something that you guys, I think, do very, very well is you have an efficiency of description around what is happening visually. That you paint a picture quickly of and then this character reaches for this object that is here, or oh look, here is the beautiful vista we are looking at, and still manages to capture a lot of the imagery that make it feel like an episode of anime that you're watching. So how do you guys have any kind of insight or lessons learned when it comes to writing for an audio medium as opposed to writing for being on stage, writing for a TV show, etc.? What kind of tips and tricks do you guys kind of do to make sure that it is as tight and digestible and punchy as it needs to be?
I think the trick really is not spending too much time describing things, because I feel like, a listener can paint the picture themselves if you give them the broad stroke that they need to put things together. And, we have the art that really, it's like, if you've seen, Claire's episode art, you're like, oh, cool. That's kind of what the space they're in looks like. That's what their outfits look like. And if you know that, you don't need, when I'm writing the like Mendel lines, who's the narrator, I don't need to put every tiny little detail in there, because I feel like, we kind of follow that, especially with like manga. Manga is meant to be read quickly. It's almost like your eye is supposed to just kind of follow it. And anime is kind of the same way. You watch Dragon Ball Z, they're always fighting in the middle of nowhere. So, it's not the focus all the time. And, it's like, and it's choosing those moments where something is the focus, and you do take that time. Mm-hmm. Like in an upcoming episode, the one we're working on right now, there's like the room is a little more of a puzzle. And so it's kind of, I have to take those moments to kind of describe what's happening so that things make sense. But, when they go into the stairwell, it's a stone stairwell. You don't need to know, every single thing. The brain can just help you kind of, okay, cool, established, moving on.
Yeah. It's like specificity in the choosing specific words that will give you the right amount of imagery and like the proper energy or imagery. And then also the specificity of like when you need it. Mm-hmm. as Zach was saying, like some things only need a little bit of imagery, some things need a lot. And sometimes I know that at least I will sit and I'll stare at a line and I'll be like, these words are not it. It's close, but
Yep.
it's not. Especially, I mean, again, with like Nick coming in and doing the anime stuff, when I try to like animeify things, I'll just like write what happens. And I'm like, okay, how do we turn the silly dial up? But not take up too much time doing it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just specificity and just kind of it clicks for you once you really find it.
Yeah. And another question, kind of similarly, but on your side of things, Claire. And this I'm asking to get a little bit more insight, both in your guys' process, but also in kind of how you view your part in it, I guess. So I putting myself in your shoes, I'd be like, yeah, Nova, my character.
Yeah.
You know, because it's D&D, and it's, you know, you obviously were a very instrumental part in putting together the basics, the core, the skeleton of the story, of her, of all of that. And it's I would find it difficult, or at least I could see, not difficult, I could see times where your idea of what the character wants to do or would do or is important to them or whatever might differ than kind of the overarching story. Does that occur? And B, if it does, or if it does, how do you handle it? Or how do you guys collaborate in ways that it doesn't happen? I guess, if that all long-windedly makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it doesn't happen very often because Zach and I talked so much when creating Nova and creating her backstory and everything, because we knew she was going to be the main character. So we wanted to craft her with care. She is my baby for sure. But also, like, all of the characters are a little bit my babies. Like, I know, like, I'm like, they're not, but also I'm like, they're my OCs because I draw them so much.
They they are though, like in a way, you know.
Yeah,
like,
so I'm
like some of their arcs too.
Yeah, I'm like in a drawing way, they are all of my babies.
They are like the Chibi Inuyasha.
Exactly.
They belong to your soul.
Exactly. Yeah. And of course, like, Nova the most, like, that's my baby girl. I love her. She's wonderful. And our vision is like so tuned in that we haven't had like any like big moments. I feel like there have been one or two times where either Zach will write something or we'll be bouncing something off of each other, and I'll be like, I feel like in that situation, Nova would maybe respond in this way. And then it's either we need this thing to happen for the plot.
Yeah.
Or, oh yeah, I see that. We can zhuzh it from there. And kind of going in with Warlock, we wanted to make sure that we did, while we are supporting this big, beautiful, wonderful collaborative thing that we do, we wanted to avoid any like potential mess.
Sure. Of course.
In lack of a better word. Where Zach is the producer, it was his show. Without Zach, the show wouldn't come together because we wouldn't have the audio edited and all of that. So he does get final say on things if he's like, yeah, but she really needs to do it. I'll be like, okay.
Yeah.
But situations like that very rarely occur because of there's just like a great amount of communication between the whole team. And I think we all, while like each of us have our own character, we were all there for the creation of all of the characters. So I feel like we have a pretty good understanding of the end game for everybody and also of each other's characters.
Yeah,
so,
a little more sandboxy, it sounds like.
Yeah.
In terms of these are all the toys are in the sandbox, and ultimately Zach is making the call of where the toys are going, but it's all part of it. Yeah, that makes sense.
But like Claire said, the communication and respect for each other's ideas.
Yeah.
That there is no bad idea, that some like, you know, and like with the amount that we spitball, not every idea lands, like, for everybody. We all are like Like, what about this?
The
And
correct,
it's like,
safe way to treat other
Yeah.
other humans who are collaborating. Yep.
right. And so it's like everybody gets like basically we all talk every day. We've been
Yeah.
since last like
Like
October.
a year and a half. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like,
I was going to ask what the timeline was of when kind of it kicked off.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that makes sense.
So we all know each other. We all know what our strengths are, and we're kind of what we want to do, and so it's like Nick has told me, he's like, look, I'm not much of a writer. I don't need to be involved with like the story stuff, but like if you need action or like stuff for Ren, give it to me. And so like he's got a new attack coming up, and I was like, look, I have him like kind of finding that balance of like, all right, cool. I wrote this story part here, but I need Ren to do a cool attack. And he's like, got it, done. And it's like, I just kind of let him do that thing, And so it's just about like listening to each other, communicating. Like I don't think anything so far, right?
I know.
Yeah.
I was like trying to think
good.
of stuff.
All been good.
Yeah, it was
Nobody's
really
like-
fun. There was an episode in season 1 where we knew that Nova and Briar were gonna go off and have a little head buddy moment, and Zach was like, "Okay, this is kind of the end goal of that conversation, but I want the two of you to write it together." So Jackie and I got on a call and we wrote it together.
Yeah, awesome.
And it remains honestly like one of my favorite little moments in the podcast. I think it's just like such a sweet little moment. So it's been wonderful to be able to do the show the way we're doing it.
So it sounds like, and I was going to ask, kind of Zach, you specifically about how you do it, but it seems to me like it is very, very much just like, I don't know, collaborative delegating. Is that too corporate sounding of a word for it?
Lots of synergy,
Yeah, exactly.
No!
But yeah, I'll just ask, what for you as producer, especially with people who each have their own say in this, who have their own ideas, have their own tastes, have their own what have yous, but also knowing that at the end of the day, you are the one who's writing, who's incorporating it, who's editing it, who's putting it together. How do you like to manage that and manage kind of the relationship aspect that goes into such a collaborative and I would imagine kind of emotional thing where they are all of your babes and your sweet children, and you have ideas of what they're like and who they want to be and all these kind of things. Do you have any helpful advice?
Well, like I did something once that was completely collaborative without any kind of like, I don't want to say leadership role, but I guess that's the best way to put it. It's like a leadership role where if it's like full, like a free for all, everyone has ideas and gets like, we all have to like trying to decide stuff together. I found that sometimes that actually makes things worse, because sometimes people do get their toes stepped on and their ideas are a little bit dismissed. And I feel like having me kind of be in that role to just be like, hey, I really like where you're going with this. Maybe we shelve that and do something else. It coming from like the beginning of me kind of being like, hey, I'm going to be the final say on stuff. Yeah. It almost feels like it is a safer space.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. That's
clear rules.
I was going to say that. Like it feels like not kind of having to be the one to like necessarily kind of step in with other people, where I can just be like, I don't really see that scene kind of like that, but I like this idea. There's a lot of negotiating, a lot of trying to meet in the middle for anything that, like I said, that I don't think that's really happened that much. Even I feel like we all kind of are on board for a lot of the stuff.
Sure.
But yeah, me having that framework, and like Claire was saying, like, I'm like, all right, here's the scene, here's the end goal, here's kind of what I want to establish. You all give me some ideas for it, write stuff down. I'll go in, I'll tweak, I'll say like, hey, can we maybe change this? And that way it feels like no one is getting like pushed aside for their ideas. Kind of, do you know what I mean? Like kind of coming in with that kind of that role, like you're saying, like having that role.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. So I think kind of one of the last structural story processy questions for Warlock that I have is, when you guys were putting this together, it's a very archetype and trope heavy show in the good ways, in the ways that it should be and needs to be what it is, and works beautifully because of it. So when you were going in, and I'm sure this evolved as you're putting it together and continues to evolve, but were there any kind of tent pole design aspects you guys had of like, anime shows or shonen shows have this happen, so we're going to make sure we have this happen, or, oh, this show is what we really want. We love these 3 shows and we want to rip out the guts of those shows and throw it in our show. I definitely have several guesses on some of the shows that are like, yes, it is much like
I'd
this
like
show.
to hear yours.
I want to hear first. I want to hear.
I am not the one being interviewed. So for you guys, what were some of those kind of like,
I want to know that.
Come on.
Design?
Before we
I'll tell you
pull the
after.
curtain back.
I'll tell you afterwards.
Okay.
I don't want to influence anything. What were some of those kind of design tent poles that you guys went in? And I guess it's true for and the D&D side of thing too. But like, what were those things where you were like, almost like or what's it called? Like for like shows where they have like rules. What's that called? Like a TV show.
Oh.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Oh, I know.
Where it's like, this character never does this, and like anytime that we have this sort of an episode, we make these sort of choices. I don't remember what it's called. It's like a playbook.
I know what you're talking about. It's
something. It's not important. But yeah. So do you guys have anything that you guys kind of like built in as pillars to the storytelling and designing of your narrative? That kind of hold through, at least for an episode, a moment, or throughout the whole show?
I feel like for sure it's kind of with Nova kind of coming into this magical world, being a newbie while everyone else is kind of established. I feel like that is kind of a newer trope that has been kind of prevalent in a lot of, like, I'd say post 2000 animes. Mm-hmm. So I feel like that, that's very much like Naruto, My Hero Academia, Jujutsu Kaisen, those kind of shows that kind of are like, I'm a newbie in this world, getting my bearings while I also have this incredible power that I cannot really control all the way. So those, writing that first episode was when I was in the middle of binging Jujutsu Kaisen. Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot of, I was like, oh, I love the way that Sukuna and Itadori have that relationship of like, Sukuna's like giving Itadori power and, but also is kind of a little bit antagonistic. And so that definitely heavily influenced that. But a lot of the tropes overall are very classic shonen, very like, probably my favorite anime is Naruto. And so a lot of it comes from that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I was like, you're making me a girl who suddenly gets magic. It has to have at least a little pinch of magical girl in there.
I mean, only a little pinch? Why stop there?
The pinch is gonna get bigger.
No spoilers.
More of a handful.
It's
we're putting a cup in at least this season.
Very satisfied.
I have been personally pleased with this development. Yes.
But they're also like, Nick and I were just kind of like bouncing ideas off of each other for like just protagonists that we like. Because especially like there's the shonen protagonist syndrome.
Yes. And
we wanted to choose really good protagonists and draw what we like from them.
And that by the way, for listeners, what is the shonen main character syndrome?
It's a lot of like, I'm gonna do this thing, which like, yes, Nova does that, but a lot of times it's like the protagonist can get a little like annoying and can get a little just like one note. Yeah.
Yes,
and
the more all the nuance is in the secondary supporting characters, and then the main character is like just a whatever.
Exactly. And Nick, Jackie, and I all love Hunter x Hunter. So Hunter x Hunter definitely has influenced our characters. And we've been trying to get Zach to watch it. It's just so lovely. And so we were just trying to like influence like head empty in what ways, because head empty is essential for an anime protagonist, but it has to be charming.
Yeah.
Right.
And like the proper amount of drive and like enough of the like doubt without getting edgelordy. And yeah, so I think big influences were there's a touch of Sailor Moon for me, Hunter x Hunter, Jujutsu Kaisen, Naruto. We're getting a little more One Piece influence. Pretty much just trying to draw inspiration from the great shonens that are there, because there are so many shonens.
One of my favorite things is when someone listens, they're like, "Oh, this moment reminded me of this show."
Yeah.
And it's someone will tell me the exact same moment and be like, "It reminds me of this show." And it's like, that's exactly what we're going for. Just that kind of that
feel,
mood, the feeling of let's, because that's what makes tropes eternal, is that they work, is that they're familiar. The human brain loves the familiar in a different situation, and so we're trying to capture that.
And I will ask one more process writing question for you, Zach. One thing that always just really, I think what really makes the show work, or like takes it to that next level, I should say, is those little sound effects, those little like almost the incidentals that you put in of like, oh, this person is dreaming about a meal that they really want, and like just those little like. Exactly. And not even just sound effects, but of specific writing choices that you make that translate not just kind of the genre of anime onto audio, but of the experience of watching anime, where it kind of gets that extra layer of like authenticity to it. So how, like, at what point in the process of writing an episode do those come in? Like, does that just kind of naturally part of the process? Is that like, okay, cool, first draft done, now we go inject some more anime into it, and then we hand it off to to other people to inject even more anime into it? Or like, how does that come to you in the process?
So when I was working on the very first episode, what I did was I would, because I am a photographer by trade as well as actor, and I spend a lot of time editing photos. And so this is before I had a second screen, and I was like, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put some Naruto, some My Hero on the background and just listen.
Yeah, I love that.
And I was like, oh, these are I'm hearing these things that I know what's happening. There were a lot of times where it's just they're talking and I'm not sure what's happening, but then a sound effect would happen, or something like a character would say something. I'm like, I know exactly what's happening. And I was like, I have to make sure that we capture that. And it was very intentional at first, but now it's kind of become second nature. Yeah. Just writing, I'm like, oh, here's a cool moment for that. Here's a great moment for that.
Mm-hmm. I think we also pick up on that, because all of the voice actors are also very into anime as well. And I know that, like, at least I try to make a specific choice of whenever, like, initially talking to the lady in darkness, like outside of the world, like the internal talk Nova is a different voice than external talk Nova.
Yeah.
And definitely. I try to be specific with that, and I think the other actors do too. And it's like Zach said, it just is, we're like, we know to do it this way because it's the way that we do it now.
Yeah, that makes sense. So on to all of the glamour of externalizing.
We want to know what your shows
I was gonna say, don't you dare.
I didn't want to skip over it. I didn't want to skip over it, but I had to ask so many other questions, and I was like, I'll end the episode on it. I literally like jotted it down on my notes to make sure that I did. But I'll do it. I'll do it now. I'll do it now. The main ones that immediately jumped out to me, definitely Sailor Moon and definitely My Hero Academia. Like those are the ones that like I also kind of had the most kind of like exposure to of your guys' list. I also got a little bit of Naruto, though again I haven't ingested as much Naruto to like really get it, other than like, okay, I see some structural things that are in there. And then I also, and I think it was just the vibe of some of the non-Nova characters, a little bit of Yu Yu Hakusho thrown in.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Like,
yeah, Yu Yu Hakusho was one of my first shonen shows back when it was on Toonami. Yep.
That was, and those are
So,
again, and there's tons of other ones.
Yeah.
Right. Ren being primo example of like, that dude is definitely off fighting demons in a martial arts tournament for 150 episodes. Absolutely.
The spirit, I mean, what is the spirit gun if not Eldritch Blast?
So, Warlock, it's in the can. You've recorded, you have your vision, your sterling vision, your collaborative processes, all that good stuff. And then it is time to unveil Warlock to the world. And I give this long-winded preamble because I think you guys are very, very good at marketing yourselves online and elsewhere, through Twitter, through Instagram, through excellent memes, through just kind of a nice distillation of what your show is. So I wanted to kind of talk to you guys, not just about, hey, what's worked for you guys, but also just like, how do you guys talk about your podcasts to other people? You know, kind of what's the distillation of 20 episodes of anime and feelings and Dungeons and Dragons and all these other things. You know, how do you go about describing it in an eye-catching way?
It can be tricky because there are so many parts to it. But I try to really hit on the audio drama aspect because I feel like early on in our Twitter marketing, I realized that people are looking for actual plays, and they'll listen and they'll say, "Oh, this is just an audio drama." I'll be like, "Oh, yeah, maybe we should be more upfront about that." Because a D&D podcast, people hear or see D&D podcast and they think, "Oh, actual play." You know, I had someone reach out to do like a dice sponsorship, and they were like, "When do you guys normally play?" And I say, "Oh, not ever." And they were like, "Oh, okay, bye."
Guest for you.
I'm like, "Yeah, we're not. No." But so it's it's a little tricky. But I always try to really like the catchphrase. I always say it's a D&D audio drama with an anime twist. It's Saturday morning cartoons, an anime, after school anime, but in a D&D fantasy world is kind of what I try to get across.
Yeah, and you get it across effectively and frequently. Be sure to follow for all the good memes and jokes and arts and whatnots.
Yes.
And another thing I kind of wanted to briefly talk about as we wind down is you guys had a Kickstarter a handful of months ago now.
Yeah,
over the summer.
Started. I think it launched in August. I can't remember. I guess
the
I can
Kickstarter. It might have been end of July.
I think you're right. I think
Kickstarter was your baby.
You should know. When was your baby born?
I have what's called ADHD, in which I have laser focus on things that I want to, and then
it's gone forever. What? I have no idea what you're talking about. That's
so I'm trying to think. Okay, so
unusual experience. I can't imagine what that must be like.
What is? I'm trying to. I'm at the Kickstarter right now. It launched July 26th. There you go, Claire. You're right.
I'm proud of myself.
Victory is mine.
I'm terrible with numbers. I'm awful.
And this was relative. I mean, this was especially because you guys release. Is it every 2 weeks or once a month? I can't remember.
We try to do 2 episodes a month.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Sometimes life gets in the way. Like I said, my writing process is not ideal.
But sometimes life gets in the way, and so it goes. But I remember seeing the Kickstarter and being like, holy crap, this is, as far as we were concerned, immediately after you guys had launched. It's like you were a few months in, you were a handful of episodes in, and you had a Kickstarter and a very successful Kickstarter. So was that always part of kind of your guys's plan or vision for the future of the show? Is that something that you looked at the success of the show and how quickly it caught on and said, hey, what if we did this? Or how did that kind of come into play for you guys? And what was the Kickstarter for, I guess?
Well, Zach was talking about getting Warlock turned into a manga pretty early on. Into a manga, into a comic. Because we're all like, oh my god, that would be so cool. And of course we're all like, oh my god, what if one day like the show gets picked up and gets animated? Like those are all things that would be amazing and cool. And then we finished season 1 and we got about as good of a start as you can hope for, honestly. And Zach was like, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do a Kickstarter. And we were all like, okay, buddy.
All right.
We don't know how it's going. And Zach was like sending me a bunch of like artists. And then, yeah, Zach, you take over from here.
Yeah. So basically I was like kind of casually looking at artists just kind of wherever I could. As you know, it's very difficult to find artists on Twitter because that's when the bots come out.
Yep. Yes, it is.
If you mention art, you get a million. You know, you get
DM me and I'll show you my
portfolio.
My portfolio.
It happens to be like the same portfolio, kind of essentially. Same, but anyway. So like, I kind of was casually looking at art on ArtStation and seeing some stuff on Twitter, and I was looking on Reddit, and I saw this guy. His name is Gabriel Facina, and he's a Brazilian artist, and he posted like a comic he had done for someone else and some of his other just kind of like portfolio stuff. And he was like, hey, I'm looking to do a long-term comic project. Here's my price. And I was like, oh wow, that's actually like really reasonable. And I really like his art. And I'm like, okay, so what, like, let's get a couple pages done. And I think we got like 5 pages done. And it was like, okay, this is really cool. I'm going to just 100% dive into this. And spent, I feel like I probably gave Kickstarter like 50% of their hits, their visits.
Just refreshing over and over.
Constantly. I was in there constantly like looking at other comic Kickstarters and just kind of seeing what I liked about it, what I didn't. And so I wanted to make sure that everything was kind of like airtight going in. But basically the Kickstarter was for the first 3 episodes initially. That was our goal, was just the first 3 episodes of our show drawn. Originally it was going to be about 20 pages. I was like, I feel like it's pretty reasonable. We'll put our stretch goals to different episodes. And so, I think we funded the first day, didn't we?
Yeah.
Like first like 6 hours, I think it got funded.
Yes.
We're like, this is
again,
so
I remember because I was also like, they just launched and it is,
wow.
Whoa, okay. Hell yeah.
So we were like, oh, okay, maybe we'll hit these goals. And so we did, we've had to change. Gabriel kind of looking through the scripts. He's like, hey, I know we talked 20 pages. I think it might have to be like 25. And so we took out one of the chapters and just expanded on the 5 chapters. But it's nice because we have the first half of our season is getting drawn.
Awesome.
It'll probably be done like May. But yeah, it's so exciting. He emails me a sketch one day, and then the next day I get the full finished page. And it's like, I'm like, all right, Gabriel, what you got today? I'm so excited. And yeah, he is an incredible artist. He just, his detail work for just like 2 days worth of work is just amazing. And so, yeah, we're very excited about that. And so hopefully once that one gets done, we want to get the second half done at least. So but we have to get the first one out, to people before we say, hey, give us some more money.
Yeah. What just get a jump start on this next batch. Yeah.
Yeah. Gabriel does such a good job, not only of capturing the characters, he captures the energy of the characters so perfectly. Like Zach sends us the updates too, and we're always like screenshotting down to the specific panels and sending that to each other.
Like the one today was just like so Nova. I'm like, he gets Nova.
It's
he gets Nova.
He gets all of them. That's
does.
the best thing. And then he also does like such beautiful world building. Like anytime we get shots of like Oakvale or the town, it's always like, oh my God. It's so good. I admire him so much as an artist. And I am thrilled that he is the one who's drawing the show for us. It's great.
He's definitely on board for part 2. So
yay!
So you guys have also had a ton of just success, and a lot of people have really fallen in love with your show, and like you said, have like really direct access to you to tell you that they love your show. So just kind of reflecting back on this, I guess, what year plus of work and really successful launch that you guys have had. What's your guys' kind of thoughts and kind of impressions on the journey thus far? Again, obviously you had Severed Sons already, but this is kind of its own thing and its own kind of like stratosphere also. So what just kind of has that part of the journey been like, and had such warm, large scale reception for your guys' show?
It's awesome. It's really like anytime we get fan art, I cry. Honestly, even like when we first started commissioning other artists to draw the characters, I would just cry. Our chibi artist is wonderful.
I love her art so much.
I do too. And when we first sent her Nova and she was like, her design's so cute, I was like, thank you. And it just means so much to have this thing that we started as like this sounds fun and cool, and like it's a pretty niche thing, so like hopefully it does okay. And then to just be met with the response we've been met with has been incredible. And it just every day we're like, wow, people really like the show. And it's all you could hope for.
Yeah. When we have new episodes come out, we have someone in our Discord who's a Patreon member, Nose. Shout out, love you, Nose.
You're the best.
Do like long, like speculative threads on what's happening, and I'm like, and I'll be like, someone is like, the first time it happened, I was like, someone is writing theories about our show. Someone is that excited about our show, and it's like, he's accurate about a lot of it.
Yeah,
he's not wrong.
Nose, don't try and guess too much, because I'm sure he'll listen to this. But like, he'll be like, oh dang, he was right on that.
Yeah.
So it's very cool to have that dedicated fan base like that.
Yeah,
of course. So where do you guys hope that this is gonna go? Especially now, kind of now now that you've done a season, you've done a Kickstarter, you have plans and schemes and all kinds of good things. What do you guys, what do you guys plan for the future? What do you hope for the future? Or just kind of what's next for you guys?
I think first and foremost for me, I have to remind myself, because I get so easily distracted, is the podcast first, the story first. Finish that. I said, I have like the bullet points of what needs to happen for this story to be told. But it's just, Brandon, who's another person, he does not, I wouldn't say he does like though he did kind of write episode 14 because he ran that one.
Yes.
So he did, I will give him writing credit on that episode for sure. But he's definitely like an ideas guy. And when he comes over, we'll just sit there and he'll be like, well, what about, have you thought about this? Have you thought about this? Like, this is cool. And, like we kind of have those like bullet points for like the series, and, we're going to fill in those gaps. But it's like, we know, like we could, if we're like season 8 and demand is still there for us to keep going, we could easily write a season of something else. But, Brandon kind of had this idea where he's like, I have a great idea for like what happens after this, because he knows the ending. So it's like, I have an idea what happens after. I'm like, that's so true. Like, we don't have to stop at this story.
Yeah.
Or I had the other idea where I was like, I was big into Gundam Wing, and like I said, Neon Genesis Evangelion, where I was like, maybe we, do a spin-off where we're doing like a mecha
Mech series, yeah.
a mech
Mhm.
series, like kids and robots fighting aliens or something like that. It's like that's could be the next thing, but I have to remind myself. Like I'm trying to temper myself right now because I was like, okay, what if we do a D&D supplement set in the world of Warlock, in which we kind of write rules for creating legacies, and we have items that we've added in the show, and I'm like, okay, calm down, calm down. But there's the possibilities feel endless for us right now,
Mhm.
and like the main thing is just getting the story told.
Yeah.
But it's like if stuff happens from there, who knows? We're open to everything and kind of rolling with where things go. We can control the story being told.
Yes. Right.
Everything else
Mhm.
is just we're going with the flow.
Yep.
Yeah. And we have like so much invested into this world that we've built and just continue to build already that like I know out like oh I just love the story. I love all the
Mhm.
characters. I love this world we've created. Yes, we're so invested in the story that it's so exciting to tell things, and we're doing some interesting things with the Patreon where we are expanding the universe a little bit. So we are not only like the episode
Yeah.
writing right now is the beach episode, but then I
Gotta have a beach
also you gotta have a beach episode.
Got
Gotta
to.
have a beach of them. We need a summer festival.
Yep.
Yep.
I'll write that
Yep.
one next.
Yeah, next. Seriously.
Yeah. And then I'm working on creating a sport, so we can have like a sports episode, and at some points deviating from the main cast, so that we can either feature some of our secondary cast, or it just create entirely different people that are like, what was this random person at the tower doing the day that something in the
Yeah.
in the show happens.
Right.
So that's really fun, and I'm very
Exciting.
excited to really get in on that. Because yeah, it's just a cool little world that we have.
Mhm.
I feel like it's gonna be hard to say goodbye when we're done.
I'm gonna just cry. I'm just gonna cry.
Probably cry.
Fair. No, I mean that's the sane reaction. I think is just full breakdown. Absolutely.
Yeah.
You guys, I have to warn you.
Okay.
You are now approaching the lightning round of Reckless to Talk.
All right, here we go.
It is a gauntlet of emotion, of mental gymnastics, and mostly just fun questions. I tell everyone the same spiel, give or take. These questions are the same for every single guest that we have, asked in the exact same order every single time. There is no wrong answers. That includes a one-word answer. That includes a, actually, this reminds me of a 12-minute long story that I'd like to tell right now. That is also highly acceptable. I will try my best to give a respectful pause and be like, that's all they're going to say. Great, we will move on. Also, the answer, I don't have a good answer for that, is also has been used and is encouraged to be used if you indeed do not have a good answer for that. Who wants to go first every time? Does anyone have a strong compulsion?
I'm very competitive, so my soul said me.
Great,
Also
done.
very
Go first.
competitive.
But
I
because you jumped in-
know.
What's arm wrestle for? No, you go first.
You jumped in to say it would be me, so you win. So we are going to go Claire and Zach every single time,
Suck
moving
it,
through, moving through the gauntlet. Again, no wrong answers, no pressure, no time limit. Because hooray, we have editing on our side.
Yay.
Are you guys ready?
Yes.
For the
Before we
Reckless
do
to
that,
Talk
I just reminded
round.
of something that's a fun byproduct of our comic manga project is I haven't put the we have the pages, but I haven't put the dialogue in yet. And so I shared on our Patreon channel on the Discord like some of the pages. And did you start it, Claire?
No, Starbucks started.
Starbuck?
Yeah.
Starbuck?
Because you shared it was the Dark Nova moment.
That's
where-
right.
Yeah.
So pages, when I share them, quickly become edited to say "Shut the fuck up, Zach."
Yep.
Yeah, they
naturally.
do.
Yep.
And so every
I think I've
page
seen
I
those.
send, there's a "Shut the fuck." Yeah, they've made an appearance on Twitter. So yeah,
Yeah.
they're like, "I'm sorry." They're like, "We hope you're okay with this." I'm like, "Look, you guys are Patreon members, so you can tell me to shut the fuck up whenever
That's
you
right.
want." But anyway,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
go, please. I love it.
All right. Claire, then Zach. First question. Is your glass half full or half empty?
Full but tired.
Overflowing.
Wow.
What What excites
Wow.
you creatively, spiritually, and or emotionally?
So much. I'm I'm excited most of the time. Anything interesting right now? My little noodle is being scratched by just heartfelt moments.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much consuming any kind of media, because I immediately, as a storyteller, I'm like, oh, I love this vibe that this is giving me. How can I put that into Warlock? Oh, I love this moment. I want to steal this moment for Warlock. So yeah, media in general. Music could be music, could be a TV show, could be a piece of theater I'm seeing.
What does not excite you creatively, spiritually, and or emotionally?
I think I'm going to pass based on unsure. There are
Fair.
things, but I can't place them right now.
I'm gonna say schedules.
Oh,
Calendars. I hate.
Can I say that
they're necessary,
too?
but I hate
Yeah.
them.
Can I?
This is
that
your
too.
space. I am
I said it
merely
first, though. Just saying.
You
I am
did.
merely your paintbrush, which you are using to
Yeah.
create your own beautiful responses.
Beautiful, Zach. You win that one.
Thank you. Point me.
What is your favorite sound?
My cat's meowing.
The sound of a summer storm in the distance.
Ooh.
What sound do you hate?
Any sort of scrapey thing.
Oh,
Especially if nails are involved. Nails on chalkboard, of course, but also like nail on counter in the wrong way.
Ooh.
Also, I am a
Ugh.
barista by day, so if you move those coffee carafes just wrong, it hurts me in my spine,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll be upset for days.
Mm-hmm.
Dry erase or even Sharpie on paper that
Blech. Blech.
or
Blech.
styrofoam, especially styrofoam touching. There was a lot of styrofoam
okay.
at Christmas,
The worst.
and I had to leave the room.
No,
Anyway.
Ah.
you guys have both honed in
Little.
on exactly my least favorite sounds as well. What is your favorite word?
Nefarious.
Ooh, yes.
Ubiquitous.
Oh,
Ooh,
that's a
good
good one.
ones.
It's everywhere.
What is your least favorite word?
Right now, I'm really struggling with perder in Duolingo, which means to lose, and it's just the conjugations are throwing me for a loop.
I'm gonna say prodigy because I said prog.
You did.
Progody.
You said a few different versions of it. I
I
think
said
none of them were prodigy.
Prodigy.
It's
So
like
prodigy.
it's
I'm
like
gonna say
Benadryl Cumberbund's penguin.
Yeah, exactly.
Bandersnatch.
Yeah.
What tabletop role-playing game and or D&D monster or villain or antagonist have you not faced or run that you would love to?
A real proper dragon.
So it's a popular answer. A lot of people have not fought dragons.
Yeah, I fought a fake one. Not a fake one, but
A metal one. It was
Yeah.
Mechanical.
Yeah, a real flesh and scale dragon.
A Tarask.
What
Just
is you?
want to fight one.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, of course.
I just want to try. I just want to see. Just let me
See
try.
what
Anyway.
happens. What is your favorite adventure of all time? And this does not necessarily need to be a tabletop role-playing game adventure. It can be, of course, 1999's The Mummy. It could be an adventure that you wrote. It can be an adventure that you read, that you ran, that you watched in an actual play, or what have you. But what, to you, when I say, what is your favorite adventure of all time, what is your response?
JoJo's Bizarre
Nice.
Adventure.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite adventure probably is Back to the Future.
Ooh.
An adventure through time.
What is your favorite tabletop role-playing game / D&D character of all time?
I am so biased because it's
You would
either
not be the first.
it's like it's Nova, but because of character that I play, it's Spitz. I love Spitz.
Mine has got to be our Descended campaign. We just played a one shot with them. Is Wendell Ravenshade, my Goliath barbarian, who was Goliath, but a noble. He's like an adopted Goliath, so he's very proper, very
Awesome.
very very nice, very polite, but also just likes hitting stuff.
I I like that both of our favorites are Goliath barbarians.
Yeah,
Oh.
they are.
Yeah, but mine is also a
But also-
druid.
Final question. What gives you hope?
Community. There's a lot of not hopeful things happening in lots of different spaces, and the sense of community of the people that are in those spaces that make me still feel joy while in those spaces, I am forever grateful for, and continues to feel like it holds space to keep going, to continue with the things that we do.
Mine is, I'm going to build off that because mine is very similar, and it's having been on Twitter now for a few years and seeing just how much art people are creating, because I feel like art is why we are here. Everything else is just giving us the free time to create that art. The jobs, like, you know, like everything that we have to do to provide for ourselves is just to give us the energy and the time to create that art. And it is so nice to log on and see. Like, I love seeing that someone is creating another actual play or another, you know, like another stream where it's like, yes, do it. It doesn't even like, you don't have to have any experience, just seeing everyone taking that step into creating something that is going to last for even just in their minds for the rest of their lives. It's so cool.
Claire, Zach, congratulations. You have run not just the lightning round gauntlet, but the Reckless Attack gauntlet itself. You have emerged victorious. As a prize, please tell our dear listeners once more who you are, where to find you, how to support you, all that good promo biz.
Beautiful. Hello, 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 and goodbye, goodbye, goodbye. I am Claire Clausen. I am the voice of Nova on Warlock, and I also play Spets, the Bear Lady in D&D.
In D&D.
I mean, that's correct, I think.
It's true. With Severed Sons. You can follow me on Twitter at FemSloth. You can also follow me on Tumblr at FemSloth, and that's where I'm posting pretty exclusively art. It's a really fun little delve for me back into junior high. I'll take it. And on Instagram, I'm at FemSlothArt, I believe. But I post on there a lot less just because I don't like the interface as much.
Yeah.
Ba-dum-bum. That's it for me.
And hello, goodbye. I am Zach Burrell. I'm the producer, the fill-in for everything else person for Warlock, and also tracks on Severed Sons. You don't have to follow me, but please follow our podcast, Warlock D. It's at Warlock D&D on all platforms. We have a website in progress. If I could, I wish I could hyperfixate on making the website.
I thought you were gonna say, I wish I could just get headshots and bios.
It just needs to be like, you know, 3 sentences of who you are, what you're doing, maybe where to find you, Claire.
It's right there.
It's literally just me on there right now. But hopefully by the time that this comes out, warlockpod.com. That's where you can find where to listen, and all our other links. So yeah, please give us a follow.
And all of these links will indeed be in the show description for those of you who are interested in learning more, in viewing more, in consuming more, and supporting more. Claire, Zach, thank you so much for all of your time and for all of your lovely expertise and energy.
Thank you so much for having us. This was a blast.
It was a grand old time. Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Goodbye.
Bye. Thank you.
Goodbye.
You